Hello, guys, and welcome to another monthly CRV webinar. That's Costa Rican Vacations. Great to have you all. Once again, this is the month for November 2024. And this is kind of a special webinar where you can see a lot of us here on camera. This month, Costa Rican Vacations is celebrating its 25th year in business. So we wanted to have an exciting webinar where we get some of our longest serving staff members to answer some great questions, look back on some of the best hotels, the top destinations, and our top tours that we've actually sold in the last 25 years. So it's quite exciting. It also enables you guys to get your questions and answers into us at the end, where we're going to have a proper questions and answers session. And you've got right here on panel, you've got over 82 years of experience from myself, from Justin, Rachel, Anastasia, Aaron. So these are the guys that you want to get your questions into us, and we will go over them. We'll try and answer some of them during the webinar, but we'll make sure to spend some time at the end of this session to get back to you guys. So you can ask us anything you like, not just dedicated to the topics we're covering, anything at all, get them into us. As ever, Wendy Weber, our content editor and marketing guru, is with us to help moderate your questions and get a bunch of links sent over, which I'll be sharing. Some of you guys may have seen Justin DeBoom, one of our sales managers and fishing experts. How's it going, Justin?
Very nice. Very nice. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Rachel Peck joined us, one of our longest serving travel consultants. How are you doing, Rachel?
Good, good. Happy to be here, Adam.
Fantastic. Aaron Vanecek. Aaron's been in Costa Rica for over 20 years, been with us for a long time as well. Another Costa Rican Vacations sales manager. How are you doing, Aaron?
Doing great. Really happy to be here and talk a little bit about Costa Rica and the history of Costa Rican vacations.
Excellent. I love the Costa Rica flag in the background and your Costa Rica soccer jersey. It's looking good.
Got to represent.
You do indeed. And guys, for those of you that watched the webinar from last month, discussing everything family travel related, Anastasia's back. Anastasia, how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Excited to talk about our big milestone.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, guys, this is the team. And as I mentioned, there's numerous years of experience right here. So I'm really excited to get in on the topic. But before we do, just to give some of you an idea, Costa Rica Vacations started back, as I mentioned, November 99. Our co-founder and CEO, Casey, basically spotted a gap in the market for luxury travel here in Costa Rica. The internet was just beginning. And here we are 25 years later, hopefully still serving many, many thousands of happy clients looking for top-end experience for your vacation to Costa Rica. Some of the stats are crazy. So we pulled a bunch of reports. We've actually booked and organized over 75,000 vacations in the last 25 years for you guys. So we're doing something right. And that equates to around 270,000 clients who have traveled with us over the last quarter of a century. So this is a really interesting topic because it means we've actually been able to pull the hotels we've sold the most, the tours, and some of the destinations that we probably thought we knew that we sold the most, but now we actually have the data. So let's jump into the webinar and discuss some of these destinations first. So I'm going to list the top 5, and I'm going to ask our guests here what we think. Is there any surprises? So number 1, the Arenal volcano is the most visited region because, again, a lot of people mix it up. Number 2, Manuel Antonio on the Central Pacific, right down by the beach. Number 3, San Jose. Now, we're going to get to why that is, and you probably figured it out, but we'll discuss it shortly. Number 4, Tamarindo, up in Guanacaste. And number 5, also in Guanacaste, Playa Conchal. So, Justin, let's kick us off. Any surprises that Arenal is number 1 as our volcano region?
No, I mean, that's the flagship of Costa Rica. And if you're coming down doing the highlights, it makes perfect sense. The San Jose one was a surprise.
I guess probably because we didn't realize how many people have to stay that first night if their international flights have arrived. Would that make sense?
Yeah, and I think also San Jose, while not a traditional capital city for Latin America, it is a destination in its own, and the improvement of like activities and things that you can experience from there is probably impacting that a bit too. So, and also getting to some of the more remote destinations, having to stay there one night before or after, it starts to make sense.
Yeah, it's a good point. Aaron, speaking of San Jose, you lived many years in the Central Valley and a little bit further north in Turrialba. And now, like myself, you're back here in San Jose. For those people that wonder and usually ask the question, is it worth staying in San Jose a bit longer? What's been your response over the years?
It really depends on the amount of time they have for the trip. I mean, if you're only coming down for a 7-night trip, I'd probably honestly say San Jose is not worth it just because Arenal, Manuel Antonio, Tamarindo, and Playa Conchal, I'd put all of those top 5, those other 4 destinations above San Jose. But if you do have a 10-day or a 2-week trip, spending a couple days in the capital really can be worthwhile, and there's a lot to do.
Yeah. I remember when I was selling vacations a long time ago as well, a lot of British clients would usually arrive after a very long flight, maybe connecting in the US, coming from Europe. So, of course, you're also quite tired. And if you're coming in the afternoon, it's a nice stop off. Anastassia, when we were working together, 2008, 2009, you were living in San Jose, also meeting a lot of clients. What would you say would be a couple of highlights if you were having one night in San Jose that is worth visiting?
So yeah, lots of years in San Jose. I think just going down into the little central market is actually like a really cute experience, and it's very close to the Teatro Nacional, the National Theater. You've got the Jade Museum down there, and like it's a quirky little area. It's it's got some rough parts, but it's also like it's kind of cool to just go walk around down there, try some local food, check out
Yeah.
local restaurants. But the Central Valley area in general is also like kind of a destination because you have the Poas volcano, you've got like the La Paz waterfalls, you've got the new Starbucks coffee plantation and so forth that people like to see. But if you want nightlife too, I'd say San Jose is definitely the
Yeah.
place for that. So
After we discuss some of these top destinations and hotels, we're going to discuss very briefly what's changed in the last 25 years. You've hinted there in Starbucks and the bigger influence, perhaps, of international organizations coming down as well. So that would be an interesting thing to touch on. Rachel, I know for the longest time you lived down kind of close to Mount Antonio near the coast. Is it any surprise to you that that's our second destination as the most visited after Arenal?
Not really, because it is such a special, unique place. And to me, it really is more true Costa Rica. But more, I would have thought more people would have gone to Guanacaste just because it's easier to get into. But that to me kind of shows that it is worth going that 3 to 4 hours south to go and see where the mountains meet the beach. And,
Yeah.
the monkeys come everywhere. And so, yes, it does surprise me only because I thought more people go up there. But in terms of like the unique and the gym that Manuel Antonio is, no, it does not surprise me at all. It really is such a special, every time I drive into this day, I'm like, to see the TT monkeys go over, I'm like, wow, this area really is such a gem of Costa Rica.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Justin, on that same topic, when we plan vacations, I think it says an awful lot about an agency. We've always encouraged, if you're coming for 7 days first time, right, volcano region, then the beach. So then the big question becomes, should I be going to Guanacaste in the north for a beach, or should I go to Manuel Antonio? And obviously, when we look about, after San Jose, selling so many vacations to Tamarindo and Playa Conchal, what's the answer you give when someone's looking, hey, should I go to Guanacaste? Should I go to the Central Pacific? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. A lot of it depends on their flights and the logistics. While the two destinations are very much different, the experience can be very much similar. So in my opinion, it has a lot to do with the amount of time they can spend in Costa Rica, as well as their flights. But also, if somebody's looking for an all-inclusive hotel, that's found more in the north. But if they're looking for more of an authentic experience where, like Rachel described, is like the rainforest meets the ocean, Manuel Antonio's smaller boutique properties, the Central Pacific has more of that. So it really comes down to the overall client and the experience that they're looking for.
That's a really good point. Obviously, we see a lot larger hotels, resorts, Tamarindo, Playa Conchal, famous for big all-inclusive resorts, the Westin, for example. I think that says a lot that we do encourage an experience that is more boutique in terms of personal service. I guess you would agree, Aaron, based on the results of the destinations, people are looking for that slightly more immersive experience. And then, again, top 5, we sell like, 20, 30, 40 destinations around the country, but I guess the top 4 or 5, it's still, Guanacaste is still right up there. But overall, it probably speaks to the fact that the boutique experience is the way to go the first time around.
Well, it's the boutique experience is really a great way to see Costa Rican immerse in the culture. That's for sure. But I do understand as a father of two teenage kids, the draw to having a more typical beach destination experience too. And it also depends a lot on the flights you can find. If you're flying a better international flight into the LIR airport, then of course, obviously the Guanacaste region is going to make a lot more sense. But as somebody who's been coming to Costa Rica since way back in 1991, and that kind of gives away my age, I actually hadn't been to Manuel Antonio until about 2008 because all the tourists went there.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I thought, wow, I'm an idiot. I should have come here a lot earlier. It's great. It's really amazing.
I think you mentioned two really good points there. And again, we can touch on what's changed. But I guess as we're talking about destinations, one thing that's probably changed in 25 years is the access to the LIR International Airport now, but also the popularity of the national park as well as the country. Anastassia, isn't it true that if you were visiting Manuel Antonio, you see a hell of a lot more people now with park limitations and how many people can actually go in than 20 years ago? Anna?
Sorry, guys, my internet's in and out here.
Oh, no worries.
But so yeah, I think you were talking about the access to the national park.
Yeah,
Is
and
that
just
what you were saying?
how it's changed over 20 years. It's now an awful lot busier because of the
It's
popularity.
it's definitely a lot busier, but they've got a handle on things now, right? I think there was like this explosive time where it was like, we don't know what to do with all of these people. And now they're like legitimate bathrooms and there's like a snack shop and there are, changing stations and things that you can do. They have trash cans set up and like, there's just the logistics are a little bit more sound than they used to be. They redid that whole park and they
Yeah,
changed the place to the entrance and stuff. So I think that they do really have the tourist in mind and the ease and the comfort, making things more accessible
yeah,
also, like even handicap accessible for some of these national parks. So they're moving in the right direction to be able to allow more people to see it, but also make it so much more enjoyable because it's not just jam packed with people, not to
yeah.
mention the environmental impact on having so many people in there.
Yeah, and they put daily limits too, which help.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Is there, Justin, is there anywhere else you've seen the need over the years to put daily limits? People might ask, well, if I book this tour to a national park, am I going to be allowed in? How's that looking?
I am not sure if there are daily limits. Maybe the Children's Eternal, does that have a limit? But I think
Monteverde,
Monteverde, yeah,
Monteverde
so
does,
that whole
yeah.
area.
So
Yeah,
that's a
for the real
protected reserve.
popular ones.
And maybe Tortuguero, the canals, I would think that maybe they try to limit how much boat activity goes up and down, but I don't know for sure.
It's still such a remote location that that's kind of an experience in its own, whether it's just getting to and from the lodge. But yeah, I mean, I think Monteverde and Manuel Antonio are probably the two most popular as far as having limits, which does help the overall flora and fauna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're really good points. And you guys just mentioned there, Rachel, maybe the only surprise, and maybe it's coming in 6th or 7th, would be Monteverde. Obviously, always been very famous since it was established back in the 1950s. A lot of people want to see, birding, but the proper cloud forest experience, that's not there. I guess that would probably be a close to the top 5. If we didn't include San Jose, it's maybe worth a mention as somewhere that's really nice. But I don't think it's that common that you see park limitations other than, as we mentioned, Manuel Antonio in the high season, right? The peak of the high season, January through to April. Does it get that busy? Is that the cases that you found over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because that park is a lot smaller than some of the other national parks, that whenever you have that amount of people, I think it can tend to mess with the experience too, because then the wildlife is not going to want to be in the different corridors. So yeah, I mean, I think that's been awesome for them to kind of limit, and it helps the client's experience too, to really feel kind of that more authentic, that they're still in, a more quote unquote remote area 3 hours from San Jose. So I think that definitely helps the experience for the clients to feel that versus feel like they're, in a water park that's just getting pushed through, the line. So
yeah, I think Aaron, you've been here the longest of all of us, other than Wendy, of course, who was born here in Costa Rica. You make a good point there about the wildlife corridor and the protection, the sustainability aspect. We've been in business for 25 years, but of course, ecotourism has been here since the 70s and growing an awful lot throughout the 80s and 90s. Aaron, would you say in the last, I guess, quarter of a century, the government has to have done more in terms of managing ecotourism, sustainability, better practices in keeping not just the national parks controlled, but managing the growth of movement by the population, you know, tourism coming in. That means a lot of, I guess, potential impact on wildlife and corridors, no? But they seem to have managed quite well.
Yeah, I do think they've managed quite well. And I think some of the steps they've taken, you know, I can speak to one species specifically, which is the scarlet macaws. I don't remember ever seeing those on my first trips to Costa Rica. And now if I go to the Central Pacific or even some other locations, I see them all the time. And the government taking the step to outlaw any type of logging of their main food source, which are those beech almond trees, has done a lot to protect those. So as far as corridors, there is a lot of pressure on wildlife, as always, as Costa Rica's population grows. There is development. You know, the Costa Rica that I first saw back in 1991 no longer exists. But it doesn't mean that Costa Rica is any worse for wear. They have protected a lot, and a lot of the, I would almost argue that I see more wildlife now than I did back in 1991, maybe because I know where to look, but also because they've really got a good job protecting some of the species.
Yeah, yeah, really nice point. And that's a lovely thing to think about, that it has been really, really successful. Good stuff. Thank you, Wendy. Wendy sending me some fantastic links here, which I'm going to go ahead and add for you guys. So if you are interested as we go to discuss a little bit more about, there's Guanacaste, and here, for example, Monteverde, you guys can check it out as we go. Please don't forget to get your questions in. There's a couple have come in here from Michelle, and one from an anonymous attendee as well. Guys, we will try and answer some of these as we go. Aaron's typing out one right now, but we'll also address some of these questions in around 40 minutes or so. So keep your questions coming in. We've got the best panel possible to answer these questions here at Costa Rican Vacations. Okay, so we've discussed destinations. No real surprises there. Before I get to tours, let's run down our top 5 tours that we've sold the most over the last 25 years. So coming in number 5, we're going to go backwards this time, the Arenal Hanging Bridges tour. Everybody loves a good hanging bridge. Coming in at number 4, maybe not so surprising, the Sloth Territory hike. Everybody wants to come and see a sloth these days, right, in Costa Rica. And that's specifically done in Arenal, probably because of the popularity of people coming to see that region. Number 3, you can't come to Costa Rica and not enjoy a zip line. We specifically recommend the Sky Adventures, as it combines the Sky Trek, the combo, and you get to go up in a gondola before you zip down through the canopy of the trees. Number 2, we've just been discussing it, the Manuel Antonio National Park, the second most tour that we've ever sold. So no surprises in how popular it is. And number 1, the Catamaran tour. So interesting, the Catamaran tour. Justin, was there any surprises there? You're a man of the sea.
Yeah, I thought Manuel Antonio would be number 1, but when we saw the numbers, I mean, it does make sense. Let's be honest. Costa Rica is amazing from a terrestrial perspective. But when you get on the water and you see the coastline of Costa Rica, it's pretty spectacular. Now, I'm a fisherman, and as many times as I've been offshore here, every single time I leave, it's always amazing to look back and see the clouds over the mountains, see the rainforest. The fact that even in a developed beach area like Jaco, where I'm at, there's not towers lining the beach. It still feels very, very wild. And just it's unique. You know, seeing Costa Rica from the water's perspective is a must do, and it makes sense.
Yeah, totally agree. We actually offer 2 catamarans, one up in Guanacaste and one up in the Central Pacific out of Manuel Antonio. Rachel, if someone was asking, they want to be on the sea and they want the catamaran experience, how do you differentiate the 2? Does it just depend if you're in Manuel Antonio, this is your option? If you're in Guanacaste?
Yeah, and I think one thing that's so cool is like that you can still be out on the water and see like the birds, and then of course the whales. If it's whale season, whales, dolphins, turtles, I think it's super. Whales are a huge part of Costa Rica during the right seasons. So I think and sometimes like whenever I'm talking to clients, you know, if whales are on the list, depending on what time of the year it is, you know, I'd recommend Guanacaste over Manuel Antonio or vice versa. But no, I think the catamaran tour definitely makes sense because we just did a big catamaran tour all together for our like sales event, and going up there, it's just like being out in the water. There's just nothing. It's just it was even a little bit rainy, and we still all enjoyed very much. But yeah, I would say the experiences are pretty similar. I would say the one in Guanacaste is definitely more smaller versus the Ocean King, which is a very large. It is a very fun boat. It can be more for families or for big parties. So And then the Panache one, of course, is a little more intimate, a little more, I guess, boutique feeling. But I've done both of them many times, and they're both awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
And don't forget Tortuga Island, Costa Cat, out of the Central Pacific. Yep.
That's a good one. That's
one of the most beautiful beaches in Costa Rica. And it's
I think I remember about 10 years ago, we had an end of year staff event on that Costa Cat going over to Tortuga. That was a long day. That was a lot of fun though. Yep. So yeah, that's a good point. And you can experience getting onto the beach with that one.
And one more to mention is the one up in Guanacaste we have that's private, because that one goes to different secluded beaches, the Fun in the Sun. Yes. That's one of my personal favorites, because that one's more tailored towards what that individual group wants to do. And you can do, you can do a little bit of fishing, you can do stand-up paddleboarding, you can kind of go to more of those secluded, hard to get to beaches, which is also a really unique way to see different areas where there's not as many people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a great mention, because it's also a lot quieter, the water, and you're actually going with a purpose to a destination, right? Some of the catamaran Central Pacific, you're going, you're having a good time, you're having a few drinks, bit of a dance, maybe you'll see dolphins and whales, you've got the sunset, but actually getting off and exploring some of the beaches just adds that extra element. Excellent. Yeah, spot on. I think Anastasia's popped off. Again, the internet, 25 years, right? Depends where you are in Costa Rica. It's got better, but you never know what you're going to get.
That's what's not changed.
That's what's not changed. Exactly. Aaron, as a guy, as a family man with a couple of kids, when I look at that top list, Catamaran Tour, Manuel Antonio National Park, Sky Adventure, Ziplining, Sloth Territory, which are the top 2 or 3 tours you can do ideally with a family? Which ones do you like, or can you do them all?
Actually, for those tours specifically, you could do all 5 of them really well as a family. I think kids are going to like the zip lining the most, probably, of all of them, because it is just such a fun experience for kids.
Yeah.
Followed probably closely by the catamaran tour. It's fun out on the water. They can jump in, do a little bit of snorkeling, depending upon which tour it is. And then also the Manuel Antonio National Park tour is actually secretly good for kids, just because if you go with a guide, you're going to be able to see the wildlife that they've never seen before. Being able to see the sloths and the monkeys and everything else that the guides can spot for them is really a fantastic experience. Yeah. And the two that are off the list that are great for kids is actually the whitewater rafting and the waterfall rappelling. There's, depending upon the ages, those are fantastic.
That was one of the ones I was surprised not to necessarily see, was the whitewater rafting, knowing that it's so popular. And it didn't quite make it. But again, when I was looking at the numbers, it was really close, because there's so many different places to raft, right? Central Valley, Guanacaste, Arenal, Volcano, Central Pacific. And of course, you've got all the different levels of water, right? Class, I guess, from 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 in Pacuade in the off season. So yeah, that's a really good shout. Excellent. I think that kind of covers our top activities. Anastasia, good to have you back. We were just joking that the internet connection is not always the most secure, depending on where you are.
I'm on the hot spot now. I think I'll stay steady, I hope, anyways.
Excellent. Before I leave the tours and activities, Justin, I'll throw this one over to you. Is there any tours that weren't around 25 years ago when we started doing this that are now quite popular? Big question.
Yeah, especially since I wasn't here 25 years ago. But I will say that some of the things that you're seeing become more popular are a lot of the ATVs, the side-by-sides, things like that, which on one hand is not good, but it's good. It's a way for people to see the jungle and the rainforest that might have some disabilities, but at the same time, it can be a bit noise intrusive and takes away from the wild element. Sport fishing's always been around, but I think sport fishing, as far as popularity, has exploded. I mean, I'm a fisherman. That's what brought me here. And it's definitely in the top destinations of the world for billfish. I mean, we are the billfish capital of the world. So it was here, but as far as the popularity and the accessibility to all regions of Costa Rica, it has definitely increased.
Yeah, really good point. It reminds me, Anastasia, when we started working together in the late 2000s, I remember we weren't selling, was it not waterfall rappelling, but the canyoneering, the experience of jumping down waterfalls. And there's a picture.
My favorite tour.
I know you love that. I remember that. That's something.
Favorite.
Yeah.
That's something that I think that was the first tour that I did in Costa Rica too. It was like the first time that we went out on one of our fam trips to like check things out. That was one of the first things I had done, and it was relatively new. I think that they had done some things that were maybe similar, but it was more like tours that are coming back around now. Like the
Yeah.
waterfall rappelling was a big new thing when we had first started, but now they're doing more of like the swimming holes and like the cliff jumping into waterfalls and
Yeah.
like doing all their flips and stuff like the paddle nine guys. Man, they are something. They're an innovative group. It's been cool to watch them kind of step up
That's
more
a
and more
really,
recently.
yeah, good point, and good shout out to Paddle Nine. We did a podcast. Actually,
Hmm.
Jess, one of our guest presenters, another top travel consultant, she has done a podcast interview with the owner of Paddle Nine talking about that expansion, and figuring
Hmm.
out different ways of offering a similar experience, but as well as new ones. Before I wrap up here, Rachel, I wanted to throw it over to you because Anastasia made a good point there. The evolution of tours and coming back round, I feel like I've seen a lot of tours now that are more focused on the cultural experience, that are also immersing families into experiencing the culture of Costa Rica, cooking classes, going to see a farm, how local towns are operating. Is that something that you find that you're selling more now?
Yeah, I think most everyone here knows that I'm obsessed with the tours that are more like unique and cultural because, a lot. And I think what's really cool is our top 5 tours, except the catamarans. I know you can do that in most other countries, but all these tours are very unique Costa Rica, the national parks, seeing that, the hanging bridges. So I think like what also is a huge part of Costa Rica is obviously the culture, to be able to come into someone's house and see the way that they still make homemade tortillas and, to go out into the river on a boat where there's no one around. So yeah, I definitely think those cultural tours every time I can, I try to add in at least 1 or 2 of those, unless they've got really really young kids or something, because everyone comes to Costa Rica, and even if they don't know they're coming here, they still want you still want to show them what Costa Rica is, and for them to leave to think, okay, wow, that was truly, because Costa Ricans are so amazing, and they want to show you what they who they are, and so I think for our clients to see and feel that, I feel like some travel agencies might not do that. They just go to Guanacaste and don't include any sort of cultural tours. That's okay. But for us, like I would love my clients every time to take a little piece of Costa Rica with them to really feel like they got to see Costa Rica.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, really good point. I totally agree. I have one more question that I wanted to ask. I'll throw it over to you, Aaron. There's a lot of great tours here, and we've discussed a bunch of them. If someone was to ask, what is the realistic number? Or how many tours can I do where I'm not going to feel too tired at the end of it, but I've had a really good experience? How would you answer that?
Oh, well, it really depends on the type of traveler most people are. We have some people that want a tour or even 2 tours per day. But generally, my ideal trip would probably be a tour each day that you're at the volcano. You have a fun tour during the day, relax in some hot springs in the evening. Maybe take a tour on the way between destinations, and then the beach, maybe do only 1 tour, and then have a couple days for going out exploration, pool, beach, and things like that. That's my type of traveling. But
That
it's
sounds
going to
good.
really depend on how busy you want to be. I don't
Yeah,
want to be I don't want to be exhausted when I return from a vacation, but I also want to
no.
take
And
advantage of everything Costa Rica has to offer. Fortunately, people can come back for a second or even a third trip.
there you go. There's the salesman. Exactly. Spot on. Again, I guess it depends, right? If you're doing a tour that's 10 hours and you're trying to mix 2 or 3 tours in a combo, that's a long day. So you've got to be prepared for some
Hmm.
downtime. Well, guys, great answers. I can see the questions are flying in. You guys are answering. Laura's got in touch with us. Gerald, thank you for reaching out to us. We'll get back to you hopefully live in a little bit. Guys, don't forget, if you have questions, if you're traveling at Christmas, let us know. If you're traveling for next high season, January, February, March, April, let us know what the questions are. And we will get straight back to you. Again, we're doing this live. We will be sharing this webinar in the next couple of days on our YouTube channel, across our social media platforms, as well as our website. So you'll always be able to watch back. Yeah, a couple of fishing focused questions. I'm pretty sure Justin will be jumping on those. I can already see him eagerly typing away. Excellent. So guys, the other thing we haven't discussed yet is the top 5 hotels. So obviously, as you may not be surprised, a lot of the hotels are focused on the regions that we've sold the most. That's how we get our answers. But let's go again. So these are the top 5 that we've sold in the last 25 years. So coming in at number 5, the C Comono Resort, a lovely boutique family property right down in Manuel Antonio, overlooking the ocean, that's been around since the 90s. It's a great place to visit. Number 4, going with San Jose, is actually a lovely French Victorian building in San Jose, which is Grana de Oro. Lovely place to have some food in San Jose. Tamarindo Diria is the most popular resort, kind of right on the beach in Tamarindo downtown. Arenal Kyoto, I think opened in around 2006, whilst the Arenal volcano was actually spewing magma out the top. So you could see that for the first few years when that was built. And then number one, the property that we've sold the most is the Springs Resort and Spa, which is an incredible 5-star, 7-level tiered property with volcano views, unsurprisingly, at the Arenal volcano. Rachel, anything that stands out there? Any surprises, or is it kind of like, anything you didn't expect?
No, they're all pretty spot on. I mean, I think each of them offer their own little unique, like Costa Rica vibe to it. I think Kyoto, the view is probably one of the better views, from the hotel there, and they've got great hot springs on and off site. So no, I think all of those hit pretty spot on.
Anastassia, anything that surprised you? Again, I remember that number 5 is Playa Conchal, which is our 5th most sold destination. We should have a shout out to the Western Resort, Playa
I'm thinking,
Conchal.
where's the Westin?
I know, right?
No, that is surprising that it's not on the list. But I remember when I started, the Westin was the Paradisus.
Yes.
So maybe,
Yep.
I don't know if, it's gone through some different names. I bet that if we put all of those together, I bet that would be on our top 5.
That's a really good point. That might be an IT report issue, because a lot of people do want to come down for the all-inclusive experience.
Sure.
We still try and encourage you to go to the volcano and then mix it up. And it is right on Playa Conchal, which is a beautiful beach, one of the nicest ones in the country. No, for sure. Justin, anything that surprised you? Obviously, no fishing properties right there in the top 5, but anything that you thought was missing?
As far as the hotels, I mean, I think a part of it is that some hotels do change names, so we don't see all the total numbers.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that was not on the list. Some of the San Jose hotels, as far as the numbers of nights. Also, this report was based on number of nights, not dollar volume. So that also throws it off a bit, especially with the Westin. But overall, no real surprises there for me.
Yeah. I remember the Springs Resort, I think it opened its doors in around 2008. So that's still 8 years after we've actually been in business. So obviously it did incredibly well. I remember they filmed The Bachelor a number of times. That generated international interest, especially up in North America as well. But it is quite an experience. If you go there, you don't necessarily have to leave. They have a lot of tours on site, incorporating tubing. They've got their club. So I guess that's kind of enjoyable as well. Plus it's an incredible, incredible views and hot springs. Aaron, a bit of a curveball question. What about hotels that wasn't on the list that maybe you would have liked to have seen, or some that you think are worth mentioning now in the last 10 years or so?
Well, I don't know. There are so many hotels that I really enjoy here, but what I can do is speak to a couple of my favorite hotels, just in terms of my personal experience. My favorite hotel in Costa Rica is Pequari Lodge. I love that place because the Pequari River is kind of my happy place. I love going whitewater rafting, and being able to raft into a hotel that is a beautiful eco lodge. Spend a few days there, disconnect from everything, just really immerse yourself in nature, and then raft out. That's a magical experience that you can't really get almost anywhere in the world. So that's like a one-of-a-kind experiences. And then I think other areas that I really like, El Silencio Lodge, another one immersed in nature, waterfalls on site that are easy walks to. I love those. And then, and anywhere down in the Osa Peninsula. I mean, because the top 5 are based on total room nights, like Justin was saying, it's a little bit more complicated destination to get to, and there aren't a lot of hotel rooms in every hotel that are there. So it's hard to get on that list. But I'd love to hear everybody's top hotels in the country, because I know we have different tastes. That's for sure.
I was going to ask, I think that's a great question. I know a lot of people probably fascinated to hear. You mentioned El Silencio. That's my personal favorite. Rachel, you've named a couple here in the chat. What are your favorite hotels? Maybe your top 3?
Yeah, it's very hard because my question is always, okay, what is the category we're talking about? But I would say Playa Arbol is definitely up there. Rio Celeste Hideaway. I finally got to that hotel a few months ago. Aaron and I went, and a few other employees, and it was amazing to see. And then I think any of the Cayuga properties, I think Cayuga is definitely, anytime you go, and I've been, over the 10 years of being with this job, I've been to so many hotels every year. And every time I walk into a Cayuga, Like, and I have kids, so of course they really take care of the kids, and like, I don't know, my mouth just drops open every single time. So I think any of the Cayuga properties really are like, Cinda's up there as the top, and that's in Monteverde. So yeah, I definitely have quite a bit, but yeah, I would say those three might be my top three.
No, really, really good points. And it is worth mentioning for those of you that are interested. Cayuga is a wonderful, sustainable marketing hotel chain that has 6 different hotels here in Costa Rica and throughout Central America. And they have an amazing, I guess, how would you say, an amazing perspective in how to offer incredible cultural experiences, incorporating the local communities and giving you a top end experience. Arenas del Mar is a property that we love to sell at Manuel Antonio. Beautiful views, you know, to adult only properties, to family friendly, even on the Caribbean side as well. It's a difficult question, right? Anastasia, is there any hotels that we haven't mentioned that you would like to give a shout out to?
Nyara. Nyara up in the Arenal volcano. Nyara tented camp for me is just like spot on,
Yeah.
such an incredibly beautiful place. And that's a fun property for us because we have really seen them grow from very humble beginnings. They were like this little tiny hotel, Nyara Gardens. And now they've branched out to Nyara Springs, which is their adults only section. And then the Nyara Tented Camp, which is like uber luxury, very family oriented. I just love all 3 of those hotels. Um, Kind of a wild card for me was Flor Blanca, out in
Okay.
Santa Teresa. I went to that hotel probably like 12 years ago. It was one of the first CPL stays that I got to do, and I just thought it was so magical. And then I didn't go back for like 10 years. I went back just recently, just last year, and it was just as magical. I was like, I can't believe I haven't been back to this place. So that's one for me. And then Lapa Rios. Um,
Yeah.
it doesn't get much more magical. I do love a Pequari Lodge. Aaron was totally on point. El Silencio is one of my favorite places in the world, but you guys already mentioned those. So,
Yeah.
but Lapa Rios, I think, is just like, just even getting there, the flight there, the experience for arrival, and you see the bungalows there all surrounded with lush rainforest. You wake up to the howler monkeys, and just the food is so good, all of it. Like they just do such a phenomenal job. So yeah, I would say those are some of my top that you haven't listed yet.
Yeah.
Nobody said Tortuguero.
I was going to ask you, Justin.
My personal favorite destination in the entire country.
So
Yeah.
if you go to Tortuguero, Justin, where do you stay?
Well, for me, I have a fondness for Manitus just because of so much time spent there. But Tortuga Lodge is pretty spectacular.
Their food is like amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing, the luxury that you get there in a place that has no cars. I think that's still the appeal. There's no horns honking. There's no road. The only way you get there is by boat or plane.
Yeah.
In my opinion, more remote than even Osa.
Osa,
you know,
yeah.
it's so.
Oh, I agree. It's one thing that comes to mind is there are so many experiences to have here. It's unsurprising that many of our guests do come back for a repeat visit. It may be such a small country, but there is such an incredible, options when it comes to geography and destinations. And I think the vast array of hotels, kind of, everything that we've discussed, we've listed more than 10, even just in the last 5 minutes. We'll try and get, more of these into the chat so you guys can check them out. This is one of the wonderful things. If you are planning a trip to Costa Rica and you get in touch with one of our travel experts, it's really dependent on what you want to do for your own experience. Because there you go. Wendy's just made an incredible list of everything we've been discussing. So I'll share that with you guys because there is an awful lot to choose from. And like you guys mentioned, El Silencio, Lapa Rios, Arenas del Mar, even the Western, we've seen in the last 25 years the evolution of a lot of these properties that either maybe they were still around, or has, as you mentioned, Anastasia, Nyara, how they've grown from a small 24-bedroom tiny boutique property into incredible boutique resort of 3 separate properties offering an amazing experience. It is worth multiple visits. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the experience so far and discussing some of our favorite hotels and what we've obviously sold the most over the last 25 years in business. Before we get to the Q&A session in around 10, 15 minutes or so, we've answered a lot of your questions, which is great. Keep getting them in as we will get to them. Wanted to ask a couple of the guys a couple of general questions about what's changed over, nearly 2 decades and a little bit since we've been here. Justin, in terms of the tourism industry, how's Costa Rica changed, would you say, in the past 2 decades, more or less? And how have we played an impact? And have we managed to kind of at least adapt ourselves so that we can offer the best experience in the course of this last two decades?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one change has been the demand. I mean, Costa Rica, I remember I graduated in 2000, so I'm aging myself. And I remember the Save the Rainforest campaign, and that all started in this area. And just the general demand and popularity of Costa Rica, I think, has changed. It's exponentially increasing each year. A big part of that is for agencies like ourselves, but also the thing that I don't think has changed are the people. And I think that's what creates the demand. Rachel mentioned it earlier. And I think when I first came here, of all the cool stuff that I saw as my first time out of the country, is I left Costa Rica feeling like I had another family. And even as the demand has changed, the Costa Ricans, the Ticos, have not lost that. They're still very proud of their country. They love to share the experiences that they do every single day with the people that visit. And I think that's beyond all the fun stuff and the cool hotels and everything, I think that cultural experience is still something that attracts people back. And they come back for more of that. On a general tourism thing, I think we are seeing a shift. COVID definitely impacted that, but in general, because there's so much demand, there's more flights. We're seeing more people come for shorter trips, weekend getaways, 4-night, 5-night trips, last minute, because there are a lot of flights. And so that's changing the market a bit. Even for us as a travel agency, it's, we're learning how to deal with that. It's the one destination type trips, things like that. Cost, it has gone up, but as much as I travel, I still feel that even with the increase in price for a visit to Costa Rica, you still get a great value for the money. I mean, you think about going to some of these other destinations where it might be the same price, or you go to Mexico or things like that, you kind of feel very commercialized. And even though we think it gets busy here, in the grand scheme of things, the amount of visitors we get per year is less than like peak months in Cabo. So you put it into perspective, or you compare it to Italy or places like that, like the amount of, when we think it's super busy, it's still not that many. But the overall cost as it relates to value is still good. And then, the part that hasn't changed, which I think is truly unique, are the people.
Yeah.
I truly believe that's still one of the biggest natural resources this country has, that it can't be mimicked anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the fundamental idea, right? The pura vida lifestyle, the vibe. Wendy, I'm sure you'll agree. I would think Perez Zeledon in the south as well. Aaron, you first came here in 91. I guess would you reiterate what Justin was saying there?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Justin with regards to the people, the Costa Ricans. I mean, what a welcoming culture.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people after they've traveled with us, the biggest comment is, wow, I really love the locals, the drivers, the guides, the people that worked in the hotels. That's fantastic. And it's the biggest thing for me is just the hotel offerings have just increased so much, especially with regards to really spectacular, off the charts accommodations. I mean, we have two new hotels coming online in the next few months, which are more for very upscale travelers, because it's the Ritz-Carlton and Waldorf Astoria. But even in the mid-range hotels, you can really get a fantastic hotel experience for a great value, which is something that wasn't really an option when I first started traveling here. It was more mom and pop places, which you were lucky to get air conditioning. Now you get the air conditioning, and that's great.
Yeah. Rachel, just thinking out loud, I mean, a lot of us, we all have kids. Many of us have kids here. You've raised your family in Costa Rica. I guess that's been a positive experience. You've never thought about leaving at any point?
No, they'll have to kick me out. No, part of everything everyone's saying is the people. I love that my kids are born and raised in a place like this versus, no offense to the US right now, things are a little crazy. So I don't, just with this, over the past years, what's been going on and stuff, I feel very good with my kids here. It feels very pura vida for them.
Yeah, wonderful. Anastasia, what was it like working back when you first started at CRV in the late 2000s compared to now? Has anything stood out for you, and how has your method of offering these great experiences changed, if at all?
I would say a whole lot has changed just as far as the evolution of our company, our agency. I remember I found this job on Craigslist
Me too.
and went, yeah,
Is that thing
and
still
went.
around?
Who knows?
I don't know if it exists anymore or not, but I remember, going to what looked like a house for my first interview, and now we're just so much bigger. We've got hundreds of people, like well over 100 people. When I started, I think we were like 18, maybe 22, something
Yeah.
like that. We were really, really small. And so I think the way that we communicated with people was different. Like email was still like not new, but I remember just a few weeks before I started, people were still like faxing their credit cards or faxing their passports and stuff. So it's come a long way. And now how interactive we are with our guests, not only during the planning phase, but also just having this team dedicated to them while they're here, the travel experience team, TET. That was a significant difference from when we first started, because it was just kind of like, okay, I hope everything goes well. And now it's like, I know everything's going to go well because we have this team that they can reach on WhatsApp or on Facebook Messenger, email, telephone. Like, we're just much more available to clients. The way that we take payments is different. Like, again, no more faxing of
Yes.
anything. We've got payment plans, we've got
Yeah.
refundable rates, we've got all sorts of things that just weren't the case back when I started. And for me personally, I think that my system or my approach to the way that I plan trips is like previously, when I first started, I really didn't know the hotels or the destinations. It was just like, this is, there was a training session. This is the information you get. Um, you have a little bit of an idea, but after all of these years and having really visited all of these places, sometimes multiple times, and then experiencing it as a single female, and then as a married female, and then as a mother, all of that has really changed my approach to how I plan for people, and I feel like it allows me to give them a much more customized experience than I could, when I first started.
Yeah, all wonderful points. And it's impressive that, obviously, like you mentioned, technology, communication as a business that's quite progressive. I think you have to be able to be there in multiple different ways. The way we communicate with each other has evolved an awful lot in the last 20 years, right? With the advent,
TV.
the Frog
Frog
TV.
TV,
For those of you
the
who are not
videos
sure,
on the
by all means,
itinerary.
check out YouTube Costa Rican Vacations channel. I was very young when I started, nearly 16, 17 years ago. Dear me. I try to not look at those videos too much
You
anymore.
were my mentor in
I
sales.
remember. It's back when I
My
was selling
mentor.
vacations. Good times, good times.
Wow.
Guys, really good responses. Before I wrap up here, one of my last questions, Aaron, I'll throw this over to you. What lessons do you think we've learned in the past quarter of a century that have now benefited people and are continued to benefit future travelers?
I think we learned a lot during the COVID pandemic of what, the fact that we were not willing to allow our clients to lose a single penny of their travel dollars, despite the borders closing, hotels shutting down, and things like that. And we fought tooth and nail to either, in the best of cases, get a refund, or in the worst of cases, or at very least, be able to reschedule their trip, many times with an additional credit involved. Anastasia mentioned about the fact that, she started with a job on Craigslist and there were just maybe a dozen people in the agency. And now, even though we're well over 100 people, I think it's nice to see that we still maintain our essence of putting our clients first and really thinking about what's the best experience we can provide for Costa Rica and now other destinations to our clients. And that's really refreshing to see that despite our growth, we still try to maintain our essence as a boutique agency.
Yeah.
I almost
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know if you guys would agree, but each year I feel like I mean, even when I started 10 years ago, we were about the client, but I feel like each year we get more and more on how can we make this the best experience for our client? How can we help it be as flexible as possible? Like even back 3 or 4 years ago, I don't remember it being as flexible. And I know hotels after COVID weren't as excited about that, but I think the agency kind of helped like make it where it is so much easier. And I think every year we get more and more on what we can do to make the client's experience like top notch.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to our success and growth as we always put the client first. I mean, there may be some tough situations at times, but when you look at every year, and without the clients, we are nothing. I mean, and we've never lost sight of that from the executive team to the staff.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. It's really important to evolve with the times, evolve for the client. And obviously we're all based here. We know what a wonderful experience it is. And I think the half the reason we're here is to try and create that experience for the first time traveler or the traveler coming back for the 5th or the 10th time. There is so much to do and experience. And yeah, great answers, guys. It's been really nice chatting with all of you, just going back down the years and also talking about some properties and hotels that we really love. Guys, for those of you that may want to reach out to Rachel, Anastassia, Aaron, or Justin, I'm going to put their contact information direct in the chat so you can get in touch and you can read more about their bios as well on our website, and all their emails will be available. So thank you for joining us for the last 50 minutes or so. We have had some questions. We've got another open one. Lisa, thanks for getting in touch. I'm going to start from the top down. You guys have actually done a great job in getting back. So I'll throw this out live for the next 10 minutes or so. If you have any questions, do get them in. You've still got 10 minutes. Aaron, you answered a question from Michelle Julien. I'm looking to vacation in Costa Rica for potential relocation purposes. I want to immerse myself in the culture, but also able to walk around the markets and look at possible rental spaces, not just see the sites. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, really, for relocations, and I put this in the Q&A. If you're thinking about a relocation, I think you really need to come down and see a few different areas and really talk to a relocation specialist about the type of things you're looking for. It's really hard to say, well, go and check out Atenas, which is the name of a city here in Costa Rica where a lot of expats move to, without really having conversation for that. So, I mean, my suggestion is really to reach out to us and talk to a relocation specialist.
Yeah, no, really good point. We actually have a podcast, the Costa Rica Travel and Living podcast, that actually discusses everything in terms of relocation and traveling. Hopefully, Wendy, if you could help me out with the link from YouTube, I'll actually send that to you guys. So if you do want to learn a little bit more, we have spoken to some experts around the region here in Costa Rica regarding that specifically. Maybe that can help you out. Someone did ask anonymously, what's the best itinerary just to have a national park oriented trip? But I don't want to be too, too touristy, a little bit more off the beaten path. Anastassia, where would you send someone? Maybe 2 locations?
Yeah, so if they wanted to be off the beaten path, I would probably hop around and use flights. I would fly over and do maybe Tortuguero, maybe Cahuita. That's a beautiful little national park that not a lot of people go to.
Yeah.
Hop back on a flight and then maybe fly down to, you could do Osa, you could do the Savegre River Valley to get a cloud forest experience that's not like overrun with a lot of other people. And maybe some of the volcanoes up in Guanacaste. They're lesser known volcanoes, but like Rincon de la Vieja, Miravalles, those are some areas that they're never crowded. Like I feel like even in high season, you never feel like it's overly crowded there.
Yeah.
There's so many national parks to
There's
choose
a lot.
from.
25% of the country's
I was
protected.
gonna say 25%. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. You could come back over and over again and just start ticking them off your list here.
Yeah,
Another
fantastic.
thing to mention that I just learned, and Adam, maybe you knew this because you used to live in Monteverde, but there are no national parks in Monteverde. They're just reserves, which I thought were
Biological
super
reserves.
interesting. Like, because those could also be a little more off the beaten path because they're not like probably in the national park books and everything, but there's a lot of like reserves too that are also very unique and cute. So yeah, that surprised me.
That's a really good point. A lot of people want to go to Monteverde. They think about the Monteverde Reserve. The Santa Elena is the adjacent reserve, which is a lot smaller and also a lot less busy. So you can see very similar wildlife. And because there's less people, you may well see more. but I feel like we could do a whole webinar on off the beaten path locations.
Yeah.
Anastassia, you mentioned the Caribbean side. It doesn't get much love in this conversation because we don't sell it as much, but it's an incredible experience if you do want to go on that side of the country. The same for flying down to the Osa. Corcovado is a huge national park, primary rainforest. But again, because of where it is, you don't travel there as much. Really, really good answers. Laura asked us, I love boats and fishing. Which parts of Costa Rica would be the best to plan a trip focused on fishing, but also do a catamaran while staying at the beach and the ocean? Justin, I think you jumped on the fishing answers, but what's your recommendation for fishing for first time?
Yeah, definitely. Fishing is seasonality. And so it really comes down to the time of year you're going to visit as it relates to the areas that we recommend. The catamaran, you can pretty much do it any time of year, except in the Central Pacific and get, a bit rainier in the afternoons. But the rule of thumb is December through July, Central and South Pacific is great for sport fishing. And then once you get into like July being a transitional month through November, the North Pacific. And it really relates to weather and the migration patterns of the sailfish, specifically for offshore fishing. Yeah.
It really helps to sit down with you or one of our fishing experts to kind of plan the best way forward. So yeah, guys, do get in touch directly with us. We've got a question here for Gerald, which I think, Rachel, is actually one of your clients.
Hi, Gerald.
He says he booked a trip with you for February, and they are staying in Manuel Antonio for part of their trip. He loves to fish, but his wife doesn't. Is there a trip out of Capos? And do I just book it as a single, or can I join another group? Justin's got back to Gerald directly. Rachel, do you want to answer Gerald?
No, I think what he said was good. I think this is a common question that I'm sure Justin used to get back in the day about like shared charters, and it's not a huge thing here. But thanks, Justin, for answering.
Yeah, the main reason, just for a bit more detail, is first, you can't walk down the docks like you can in places like the Keys or Cabo and see the signs of like one spot available. Also, most people we don't have a massive charter fleet. So most boats are pre-booked weeks, months, even years in advance. So it's a bit tough. There is a company, I posted in there, it's called Shared Charters. They try to do it. They're reputable, but it's very inconsistent just because matching people up, on the same day for the same target species is difficult. So
that makes sense.
If you want to get on the water, it's worth the dollars invested to book the charter on your own because it is private and there's no drawing straws on who goes first.
Yeah.
And and you're not paying for a trip that somebody else might get seasick on and ruin your trip.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Or politics, there's a lot of different reasons it's not fun to share a boat.
Exactly. We're a very open webinar. Aaron, I believe you responded to one of Lisa Johnson's questions, which was any recommendations for the Caribbean side? I want to explore how many days is recommended for visiting.
Okay, so the Caribbean side, it depends because we think of Portuguero as being part of the Caribbean, but while technically it's really kind of a unique destination of its own because of the canals. It's not a beach destination; it's a destination to go see wildlife, to see turtles laying their eggs.
Yeah.
And so I would say 2 and maximum 3 nights is enough for Tortuguero. And then if you're going to either the Cahuito or Puerto Viejo communities, I would spend a minimum of 3 or 4 nights there. It's got a great Afro-Caribbean culture. There's a lot to do. Cahuito is a little bit more of a sleepy beach town feel, whereas Puerto Viejo is kind of graduating into one of the top beach destinations within the country. Yeah. Every time I go to Puerto Viejo, I see new restaurants, new places to visit and things like that. So yeah, in terms of time, that's what I would recommend.
Highly recommended. It's a lovely place, and swimming and snorkeling as well. Really clear water is really nice. An interesting question here that came in from Sandy. Thanks, Sandy Bard, for getting in touch. Justin, you did respond. What's happening and been happening at Liberia Airport recently? We've been asked this a few times due to its closure. What's the latest?
Yeah, so it's always fun. We had a lot of weather last week, and there was some known, I guess it was runway maintenance that needed to take place. And so with the weather, they decided to take advantage of the change there. And so as of today, it's all open. They planned on reopening tomorrow at 6 a.m., but they got done with the maintenance today. And so everything's back to normal. It was runway maintenance related. There was some basically potholes, surprise that exists in Costa Rica, but they sorry. So no, they needed to fix that. And so it's also perfect timing to do it prior to the onslaught of peak season. So
yeah.
it is back.
Yeah, and guys, it's worth mentioning the rains of the last week and a half was due to a local tropical storm. It's not that common to see this much rain, especially middle to the end of November. We're transitioning into our drier season. So yeah, it happens. The potholes, even on the runways, they occasionally need to be dealt with, but it is open as of today, which is good news. Got a couple more questions before we wrap up today. Lisa also asked, Anastassia, I'm going to throw this to you. I'm trying to choose between Tortuguero, Northern Caribbean, and Cahuita on the Southern Caribbean side, and then go to Manuel Antonio or Corcovado. Would like to see both sides, but only have time for one destination. It's a pretty cool question. Which, what would you recommend there?
Well, I was thinking she was saying, yeah, one for each side. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to know again that Tortuguero is not a beach destination. I think, you know what, for this one, I would put it out to the time of year that she's traveling, honestly, because the two sides have such different weather that you could easily do Tortuguero for some time, get some really good wildlife in, pop down to Cahuita and have a beautiful beach experience. Or you could do the same thing. You could have the wildlife in Corcovado, pop up to Manuel Antonio, have a lovely beach experience, plus some extra wildlife. So if you were coming during, the high season, dry season, January through pretty much May, I would probably do the Manuel Antonio and Corcovado. At other times of the year, the Tortuguero and Cahuita. Also factor in price. Tortuguero and Cahuita is probably going to be less expensive than Manuel Antonio and Corcovado.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Lots of factors.
Yeah, the weather is a really big one because when it's raining a lot in the central and southern Pacific region, it tends to be slightly drier in the
really
Caribbean.
Lovely on the other
side. So yeah, so then you do have to factor that in. Lisa, if you're able to get in touch directly, you could let us know when you're traveling.
And one full thing in terms of transparency is on the Caribbean side, the weather is best in September and October, but it is kind of unpredictable. It'll be beautiful or it'll rain whenever the heck it wants to.
Yeah.
That's true. A lot of people do also go to Manuel Antonio for a beach experience and then head down to Corcovado for a more immersive wildlife experience, especially if you're traveling in the drier period. Rachel, I think you just got back to one of the other questions, which was an interesting one. Thank you, Sandy, for sending this in. Rachel, is there a park or natural area in the vicinity of Manuel Antonio that isn't quite as crowded, but is appealing?
Yeah, I live down in this area and I live south of that. So the Hacienda Baru, I don't think it's an actual national park, but I do think it's a reserve. That's about 30-45 minutes outside of Manuel Antonio. It's more on the beach side. Very easy, light hike. There's even a small zip line you can do. That one's a pretty quiet one. Then we've got Carrara National Park, which is on the other side of Jaco, which could be good for birding. And then the Marina Ballena National Park is here in Novita. That's more like beach-ish. So like if it's whale season, it's amazing to go out and take the boat for the whale and dolphins, but those would be probably the top three. And if you want to go as far as down in the Osa, I would say Piedras Blancas is a really great one too. That's on the opposite side of Corcovado. It's not going to be as busy. I would say those are some pretty good ones.
Great answers. Guys, you guys have been absolutely fantastic today. I'm going to ask this to the whole team. Justin, you can ask first. Rachel has just addressed it, but I think it's a really valid question. It was an anonymous attendee that asked, but it's a really good question. What's a reasonable budget look like for 1 week vacation? In this case, this person's asked for five adults, not too fancy, but can you give a general price range for 7 days? It could be 2 adults, it could be a family. Justin, how do you answer that generally?
Yeah, I mean, seasonality is going to play a big factor. I mean, if it's Christmas or New Year's, that's peak season, or the high season of January through April. But I mean, I haven't built an itinerary in a while, so Rachel will probably get mad at me. But I think for a moderate itinerary, you're still for low season, you're going to be between 1,500 to 1,750. For high season, anywhere from 1,750 to 2,500. For peak season, anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 per person. It does depend a lot on the time of year. A family of 5, there is always the tricky part of 2 rooms versus 1 room. Hotels do have some restrictions there. You have 2-bedroom villas or shared rooms. So there's a lot of factors that go in there. But I think those are pretty realistic price points, and it depends on how many tours and the destinations and the transfers or domestic flights. A lot of that stuff is going to impact your overall experience.
Yeah.
And
But
the final
to input a pro tip could be, if you come to people like us, we know the hotels that will make exceptions for a family of 5 and still be comfortable. Because hotels, if you reach out to them directly, most of them will say no. But if you come to people like us that know the hotels personally, just a little drop.
Yeah.
That's a really good response. I mean, after 25 years in the field and in the business, I think we've really established some fantastic relationships with our top partners around the country, whether it's a rental, whether it's a hotel or a tour. So we do guarantee, and you can actually check out that guarantee as well, our service and our offerings. So we would be more than happy to help you guys out. Guys, thank you very much for attending. This is an exciting time for us. If you are interested in booking a vacation, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter, as we've got some exciting Black Friday deals coming. We're leading up to Christmas, so that could give you potential discounts for booking your vacation into next year. And of course, when you're traveling as well, you can also ask us about specials depending on when you're traveling. And like Rachel mentioned, we will always be there to help you out and offer you the very best product for exactly what you're looking for. Remember, everything is customizable. Guys, if you're interested to know more about traveling at Christmas, which is our 2 peak weeks of the year, stay tuned for the next couple of weeks. On our newsletter, we'll be providing a link to next month's webinar that discusses everything related to Christmas in Costa Rica. And it is quite a topic. And if you do want to travel for 2025, listen to this so you can start planning ahead of time. But for now, plan now. Yeah, that's one thing that's changed every year. You have to plan a month earlier than the previous year. Guys, thank you so much for everybody attending today. I hope you all enjoyed it. This video will be live tomorrow on our social platforms and YouTube channel. If you have any other questions, you can let us know in the description box related to the video, and we'll always get back to you. I'm going to leave the subscription sign up if you do want to learn more in our chat. So you can double check that, subscribe, and that's where we have all of our monthly information, specials, more information on wildlife and hotels that we would love you guys to stay at. Anastasia, Aaron, Justin, Rachel, Wendy, thank you all very much for turning up. Maybe see you in 50 years, and if not, next month. So for the next one. Guys, take care. Hasta la próxima.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.